The scene shifted to a dark, quiet night. A gloved hand held up a glowing lantern, illuminating an ornate iron gate. A man with silver hair and round glasses stood behind the bars, his face cast in shadow. The gate creaked open. Inside a dimly lit room, a blonde-haired man sat alone at a desk. He rested his chin on his hand, his eyes half closed in exhaustion. A single drop of sweat rolled down his cheek as a narration box appeared. "It's going to be another long night for you, Grand Duke Rafalo." A flashback began. A serious voice spoke from the darkness. "Between your injuries and the lack of supplies, we can't hold out much longer. Perhaps the plan to assassinate Mephisto is that even possible? Who would ever volunteer for such a suicide mission?" Another voice countered, "But if we can just draw Mephisto's attention, we could use that time to resupply or for medical treatment." A young man with blonde hair parted a curtain, letting in a sliver of light. He looked back at a white-haired girl standing behind him and said, "Suicide mission? Don't be ridiculous." The scene shifted to a war council. The blonde commander stood at the head of a long table, facing his subordinates. He declared firmly, "I have no intention of sending any of my subordinates into the jaws of death all alone." He smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Besides, the success rate is far too low. I won't allow a gamble with no chance of winning." A subordinate stepped forward, concerned. He asked, "Are you even alive? I thought a corpse was crawling out." The commander chuckled and replied, "I guess the effects of the medicine here are the real deal." He touched his temple and added, but there is a chance if I'm the one who goes." The subordinate's eyes widened in shock. He grabbed the commander's arm and shouted, "Andert!" The commander kept his composure. He said, "I will never authorize such a thing. That is an order." He looked at the subordinate with a firm expression. "You are to stay by my side until this war is over." Suddenly, a shockwave hit them. The subordinate cried out, "Andert!" But the commander, Rafalo, closed his eyes, his body swaying. Voices called out from all sides, "Your Highness, Grand Duke. Grand Duke, are you all right?" He clutched his head, sweat pouring down his face, his breathing heavy. The flashback ended. Back in the present, Rafalo let out a tired sigh. He looked up at his silver-haired aide, Dezero, and asked, "Phew, what is it at this hour, Dezero?" Dezero looked at him with concern and said, "Was it that dream again? Your complexion is." Rafalo waved him off and replied, "I'm fine. What's your business?" Dezero handed him a sealed letter. "Right, an urgent dispatch has arrived from the capital. They say His Majesty the Emperor has held a private discussion with the 5 nobles regarding a northern expedition." Rafalo's eyes narrowed. He asked, "The north? Is this because of the mines in the North Deus Mountains?" Dezero nodded. "Yes, they say he intends to place you at the vanguard, Your Highness." Rafalo let out a bitter laugh. "His Majesty is truly desperate to drive me back to the front lines." He looked down at the letter and asked, "Anything else to report?" Dezero hesitated, then spoke. "They say a survivor was found on Queen Island about a month ago." A vision of a blonde woman standing with her back turned appeared in the gloom. Dezero continued, "Her name is Bertie Lusha, approximately 170 centimeters tall, with a slender build." However, his tone grew cautious. "They say the messenger was ambushed twice along the way, making this the 3rd attempt to deliver the news." Rafalo's gaze sharpened. "Twice? Were there any peculiarities that would explain that?" Dezero looked down at his notes. "Well, she is currently settled in Midwintry working as a maid." He paused, then added, "And they say her appearance resembles Sir Andert's." Rafalo's eyes widened. His pupils contracted as a red glow flickered across his vision. A flashback cut in, Rafalo smiling brightly as he stood beside Andert, their shoulders brushing. Then the scene shifted to a close-up of his fist, clenched tightly on the wooden table. He forced himself to speak. "It's likely just someone who looks like him." Dezero adjusted his glasses and added, "He told me his only blood relative, an older sister, died during the Queen Island incident." A small thought bubble appeared beneath his words. He said his parents had passed away long before that, too. Rafalo closed his eyes and gave a cold, firm order. "Cut off such unreliable news before it reaches me again." Dezero bowed his head. I shall do so, Your Highness. Back at the Weatherwoods Manor, Daisy sat alone in her room, her hands resting on the table. She stared out the window, her expression distant. A thought bubble appeared, to think that's actually Dian's sex. She sighed heavily. I'd rather it had been an egg, no, the Viscount. A comical image flashed in her mind, the head maid running around in a panic, while the egg sat peacefully in a golden chalice. Daisy shook her head and thought, at this rate, I have no choice but to steal it if I want to use it, right? She leaned back, rubbing her chin. Still, it's a relief. The relic is right under my nose. A glowing diagram of the golden chalice and the eye-marked egg appeared in her mind. She added, I wonder if the other relics are all weapons too. Daisy sat alone in the manor, her thoughts lingering on the egg. She mused to herself that wide-range attack magic and healing magic were total opposites. Breaking down the body and reconstructing it, the dream of having one's life extended was a long and arduous one indeed. Just then, Lou appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with an amused smile. He asked, Miss Daisy, what are you thinking about now? Before she could answer, he beckoned her with a tilt of his head. Come on out. We're going somewhere. Daisy blinked, puzzled. She wondered if they were running an errand. Lou didn't answer. He just led her outside and stopped in front of a lavish boutique. Daisy looked at the storefront and asked, This place is? Lou opened the door and gestured for her to follow. Let's head inside for now. The door swung open, and a cheerful shopkeeper greeted them with open arms. Welcome, valued guests. Daisy stared at the rows of fine fabrics and mannequins, completely lost. She asked, What is this? Lou answered casually, It's for a successful debutante ball, of course. Daisy immediately tensed up. She whispered to him, I don't have any money. Lou flashed her a confident grin and replied, It's fine. I'm rich. A chibi Lou popped up next to her, grinning as he explained, The head maid gave her enthusiastic permission since I offered to pay. Daisy just stood there, sweating nervously. Lou clapped his hands together and said, Now then. He turned to the shopkeeper and rattled off a long list without missing a beat. I'll need ballroom and banquet dresses, a suit, 2 sets of everyday wear, a spring coat, and tea party attire as well. 2 sets of pajamas, and 4 sets of socks and underwear. 2 sets of hats and gloves. Daisy's jaw dropped as she stood frozen beside him. Lou held up a finger. The deadline is 15 days. Can you do it? The shopkeeper's face paled. She nervously clasped her hands together and stammered. I'm so sorry, with such a large order, 15 days is a bit. Lou didn't flinch. He simply added, They are for the Viscount and Viscountess Weatherwoods. The shopkeeper's eyes went wide. She gasped and clasped her hands over her mouth, her face lighting up with excitement. Then she snapped to attention and practically shouted, She burst into a flurry of enthusiasm. You're saying they're for the exclusive Viscount and Viscountess Weatherwoods? Leave it to me. She grabbed her measuring tape with a manic gleam in her eyes. This is a golden opportunity. No, I mean, should I visit the manor to take the measurements? Lou held up a hand to stop her. That won't be necessary. Daisy looked at him confused. Lou placed his hand on Daisy's shoulder and said smoothly, The Viscountess is busy, so she asked me to use this companion, who has similar height and skin tone, as a model. The shopkeeper didn't question it. She immediately started leading them inside, already planning the designs. But Daisy grabbed Lou's arm, her eye twitching. She whispered, I thought you said you were going to be the wife. She glared at him and added, Why are you getting the clothes fitted to my size? Lou smirked and replied, It's easier to use transformation magic if I have a base model to work from. He looked down at her with a sly smile. I was going to transform you to match my body too, Miss Daisy. Do you not like that? Daisy froze, a massive sweat drop appearing on her face. She mumbled, If that's the case, my androgynous physique is definitely more comfortable. Lou raised an eyebrow. He leaned in close, his voice teasing. Yeah. I hate it. You're too big in a lot of ways. Daisy's expression turned flat. Oh? Lou tilted his head and asked, Just where and how am I big? Daisy didn't answer. She just looked away, muttering, This crazy. She took a breath and changed the subject. Forget it. Just make the Viscount's suit for someone 180 centimeters tall, with well-developed arm muscles and a thin waist. Lou let out a skeptical and crossed his arms. He gave her a sideways glance and said, "To think you have a thing for such a short, stubby body." Daisy's eye twitched. Lou finished with a smug grin. "I'll never understand your aesthetic, Miss Daisy." The shopkeeper called out from the back room. "Are you ready?" She held her measuring tape at the ready, a bright smile on her face. She looked at both of them and asked, "Should I fit the Viscount's attire to a male physique, just like the Viscountess's outfits?" Lou nodded. "Yes." The shopkeeper paused, a question mark floating above her head. She looked between them and said, "Wait, did something change? Or is it just me?" She quickly brushed it off and waved them over. "Now come this way. I'll take your measurements." As she wrapped the tape around Daisy, she couldn't help but gush, "Goodness, how do you both have such wonderful figures?" A small thought bubble popped up beside her with the words, "You'll look good in anything." She eagerly pulled out a sketchbook. For the Viscountess, how about a soft silk dress that highlights the silhouette? A chibi Daisy stood in a flowing red gown, looking elegant yet stiff. Or this bold style that exposes the shoulders, which is very trendy these days. Another chibi Daisy appeared in a dark blue off-shoulder dress, her expression still completely deadpan. The shopkeeper turned to Lou's side. "And as for the Viscount, oh my." A portrait of Lou appeared, dressed in a sharp, tailored gray suit with a diamond brooch at the collar, a dark vest, and a crisp white shirt, his posture flawless and his expression perfectly arrogant. The shopkeeper let out a dazed, "Holy." She clutched her hands together, tears welling up in her eyes. "Truly." She looked at them standing side by side, the two outfits perfectly matching in elegance and style. A soft pink glow enveloped them as she declared, "You are a perfect pair." Daisy just stood there, expression blank, while Lou looked entirely at ease with the compliment.
After the exhausting fitting session, Daisy and Lou stepped out of the boutique. Daisy looked completely drained, her shoulders slumping. She thought to herself that she would rather be cleaning. A quick flashback showed the shopkeeper shoving yet another dress at her, saying, "Try this one too," while a chibi Daisy stood there looking overwhelmed. Back in the present, Daisy admitted to herself that she didn't realize getting dressed could be this exhausting. Lou walked up beside her, looking perfectly fresh. He asked if she wanted some ice cream. Daisy immediately tensed up and glared at him. She asked what he was trying to make her do now. Lou smiled and replied that the carrot and the stick go hand in hand, and asked why else someone would give a dog treats during training. Daisy's eye twitched. She was furious at being compared to a dog. But internally she also admitted that she did love ice cream. Lou pointed toward the trees and told her to wait quietly under the shade if she wanted it. Daisy hesitated, then walked over and stood beneath the canopy. She looked around at the unfamiliar area, and realized she didn't think she had ever been there before. She spotted a wooden sign hanging from a branch. It read, "The Midwintry National Peace Gardens." Daisy stared at the entrance gate in the distance, and wondered if this was a cemetery for the Allied forces. She shook off the thought and reminded herself that Lou told her to wait quietly. But suddenly, a dark, aggressive voice cut through the air. A red eye appeared in the sky. The voice demanded to know where she was looking. Then, a violent flashback erupted. Daisy was on a battlefield. The ground was torn apart. She was holding a fallen soldier covered in blood. A younger Rafalo knelt beside them, screaming at the soldier to get a grip. Rafalo stood up in the chaos, shouting that there were too many of Mephisto's legion. He told the wounded soldier to forget about them and get the residents to safety. The soldier gasped, telling Rafalo to grab his hand and hurry. But then he choked out his final words, telling Rafalo to give his mother his last goodbyes. Rafalo yelled at him to stop talking about that crap, and told him he would deliver those words himself when the war was over. Then, a calm voice cut through the memory. "No, Daisy. The war is over." Daisy blinked. The battlefield disappeared. She was back under the shade of the trees, staring at the peaceful stone gate. Lou stood right in front of her. He told her there were no wounded here and no demon legion. He told her it was time to come back. Daisy looked down at her hands. She wasn't holding a soldier, she was just clutching dirt and leaves. She looked back at Lu, trembling, and asked if it was really over. Lu knelt down, met her eyes, and nodded. He said no one else was dying. Then, he held up a small cup of melting ice cream. He smiled and said the only thing dying was the ice cream in his hand. Daisy stared at the melting cup. The tension in her shoulders finally broke. She didn't say anything, she just leaned forward and rested her forehead against his chest. Lu didn't pull away. He closed his eyes. A magical circle appeared behind them, casting a glow over the garden. He stayed still, letting her rest. Then he quietly told her, "Let's go home." The scene faded on that moment, Daisy leaning into him, Lu holding her gently, as the light settled around them. Daisy slowly woke up in an unfamiliar bed. She blinked, looking around the room, confused about where she was. Through the window, she could see the night sky and a crescent moon. Then she noticed Lu sitting beside her, reading a book. Without looking up, he told her there was a glass of water right next to her. Daisy stared at the water. She thought to herself that hearing Lu's voice meant this wasn't a dream, but then she wondered if her senses were just dulling, since she couldn't tell reality from a hallucination anymore. She turned to him and thanked him for saving her. Lu closed his book and smirked. He said the melted ice cream would have loved to hear that thank you. Daisy asked if he threw it away, telling him he should have just eaten it. Lu gave a dramatic sigh and said he would have, but he had to carry someone all the way home. Daisy thought to herself that he was playing the martyr, but she couldn't argue with that. She asked if he had been nursing her the whole time. Lu replied that if it wasn't him, then it was his servants. Daisy was confused, she asked if he meant the butler assassin. Lu confirmed it was him, along with the other trash she had dumped on him. Daisy then remembered the head maid and told Lu she had informed her he would be late today. Lu grinned and said he told the head maid that Daisy had buried another person and needed some special education. Daisy rolled her eyes internally, thinking it was the worst excuse he could come up with. Her expression turned serious. She asked Lu directly if he came to the Weatherwoods estate for Jensek's relic, and if he was planning to steal the Viscount egg. Lu replied calmly that he was fairly certain he had said he would tell her once the flower bloomed. Daisy told him she was just curious, and that he was definitely a strange person. Lu paused, then said that since she was so curious, he would tell her something, and warned her not to fall for him, because she would only get hurt. Daisy didn't respond to that. Instead, she asked when he would stop with that crazy talk. Lu smiled and said maybe around the time she gave up on him. He then asked if this sort of thing happened often. Daisy admitted that the hallucination was a first, but she had been having nightmares for the past few days. Lu asked if any painful event had triggered them recently. Daisy thought about it and said no. Lu then asked if there had been any joyful event that made her forget about them. Daisy again said no. Lu sighed and said she didn't know how to answer a single thing. Daisy repeated that nothing in particular had happened. Lu disagreed. He told her she just hadn't realized it yet. He told her to try some self-reflection. He placed his hand on her head and told her to close her eyes and think deeply. He asked her a simple question. What am I? Daisy closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw fragments of her past, herself as a maid, herself as the soldier Andert Pager, and even further back, herself as the woman named Pager. She opened her eyes, realizing the layers of her own identity.